I'd like you to raise your right hand. Go ahead and do that. When I say go, put it into the hand of one person nearby. On your mark, get set, go. Okay, some of you are doing gymnastics. Good for you. Now, you can let go if you want, but if you've met someone real good, keep holding on. That person you've just held hands with is your buddy. Now, between the two of you, one of you is going to be buddy A and the other one's going to be buddy B. Perfect. Buddy A will be the person that has attended Coming to Central United the longest. If you don't know that answer, then it's the one that's the youngest. So on your mark, get set, go, decide who buddy A is. Okay. Just a quick question. How many like their buddies so far? Hey, almost everyone, Wayne. Okay. So buddy A, raise your hand. Want to see who buddy A is? Okay. Buddy A, what I want you to do, buddy A, I want you to push against buddy B's hand. Really good push, buddy A. Push, buddy A. That's it. Really good push, buddy A. Keep pushing, buddy A. Yeah, that's it. Keep it. That's it, buddy A. Oh, you know what? I only asked buddy A to push. And the point is, well, there's got to be a point, otherwise we're at a family reunion, right? A story without a point. When someone pushes us, we push back. That's right. Tonight's message is meeting dishonor with honor. Now, of course, in our perfect selves, when we feel great, if someone were to push us, we're probably okay. But the real question is, what do you do when you've been pushed so hard, hurt so much, and someone pushes you? What do you do then? I'm just going to assume that everybody in this room has been misunderstood, has been treated with disrespect. You've been around people where you thought the rules were already established and they played by a different set of rules. You were playing chess, they played checkers, and they didn't tell you the change. I'm going to just assume there's people in here that have been gossiped about, slandered. And there's people here that have done amazing works of service and people haven't thanked you properly. And there are people in pain here emotionally, physically, spiritually, to the point in which you may wonder of your identity and your direction. And it's not fair, is it? So the real question is, what do we do? The good news is there are some answers. I'm going to read from 1 Peter 2, and the verses from 19 to 25. And I was very encouraged when I read this, and I didn't know about this before. It says, "For God is pleased when, conscious of his will, you patiently endure unjust treatment." I guess he's thinking that we're all going to be receiving that. But have you ever thought you were the only one? I have. Of course, you get no credit for being patient if you've been doing wrong. But if you suffer for doing good and endure it patiently, God is pleased with you. God called you to do good, even if it means suffering, just as Christ suffered for you. He is your example, and you must follow in his steps. Jesus never sinned, nor ever deceived anyone. He did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when suffered. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. Recently, I had an experience where I didn't think I was treated very fairly. Perhaps if you just recall the last week or the last month of your life, you could pop one up real fast as well. But this time, I turned to the Word and I thought, what does the Bible say about handling dishonor? And I've been doing it wrong for a long time. I just want to share with you that the meeting Dishonor with Honor is what I think Jesus wants all of us to go through in order for us to be examples to others of the Christian faith. So Jesus died on the cross. We all agree with that one, right? He died on the cross for us. And I used to not really understand what that really meant. But he died for every one of us. Can you imagine being betrayed by the people that you've been discipling for years? Can you imagine being mocked all along the way for hours on end? Can you imagine your own father telling you to go and die for other people's sins? And all Jesus really said was, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" That was the extent of his pushback. What Jesus didn't do was he didn't get angry and take it out on the Father, blaming the Father for his circumstances. He didn't try to seek revenge. He didn't blame those who betrayed him. In fact, what he said was, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He didn't pull back his love when he returned from the resurrection. In fact, he sought out doubting Thomas. We hear that doubting Thomas. He's the one that doubted that Jesus would rise again. And so when Jesus returned, he went and found Thomas. And he said, "Here I am. It's true." And the reason he did that was to restore hope in Thomas, because Thomas was a faithful disciple, but he was struggling with believing. Jesus went to him, even though Thomas doubted. And he didn't ignore Thomas by not making eye contact or going into a meeting and just making sure he didn't talk to him and went and talked to everybody else. No, he did the opposite. So I'm wondering, in a recovery service like this, where every one of us is addicted to something, could some of us be addicted to revenge? To getting back at somebody? Because, that push thing is true for all of us. And by the way, have you noticed the people that need to be here are not here? The ones that need to be fixed? Like, you've saved seats, I see, and they're not here. Because I know what you're thinking. Yeah, this is great, Val, but I work with this lady named Edith, and if she could just change, then it would be better for me. Okay, Edith's not here. And Jesus knows, the Father knows, that Edith would never maybe think of coming to a place like this to learn how to treat others. Why? Because Edith is in the cone. Do you know what the Edith in the cone is? Here's the cone. It's a little hat that people put on their head. And when they put it on, they look inside and there's a mirror. Oh, hey, it's all about me. It's all about me. Hey, let's put a big mirror here so I can really see myself. It's all about me. And when they've got the cone on, they can't look out of the hat to see that other people have needs. They can't say, "Hey, thanks so much for running the Pathways program with your heart and soul. Thank you so much." They can't say, "Thank you so much for being a great support to somebody who's running the Pathways program." They're not capable. So the real question now is, when you run into these very incapable people, and they're out there, they're not in here, I know that. But when we run into them, what do? Do we push back? I think Jesus has a plan. I don't know, what do you think? I think so. But have you ever doubted the plan? I've doubted the plan. What a gift it is to be asked to do this message, because it forced me to figure out the plan. Then I thought, wow, I've got to make a lot of amends for 49 years because I've been doing it a little bit wrong. And I realized something, that my resilience was much better when I had the plan that God is calling us to do. So what's the plan? Well, step one, we got to know what to do, right? Do you have a life by design, or do you have a life by default? When something happens, do you just default to your emotions? Because I know that's common, and that's where the addiction can come in. Do you know, in writing about Bully Free at Work and workplace bullying, it's always been fascinating to me to understand why someone would bully. See, I have compassion for the person that bullies as well, because as you know, people who are hurt people. You know that already. But I'm fascinated why it happens. I don't want to give up on that person. And there's scientific research that says, after years and years of blaming, of trying to get reattached to people through maybe trying to have power over them, that the brain then gets addicted to these ways of being. Revenge. It's just the automatic thing. So now I'm talking to HR, human resource professionals all over North America, and I'm thinking, if we just put in a frontal lobotomy lab right in HR. I think we can solve it all. What do you think? Maybe one day. I'm thinking that if it's an addiction, then maybe those of us that are addicted to this pathway might want to follow the steps of addiction to get out of it. Not a bad idea. So have you ever gotten mad at somebody that's taken out their revenge on you? Sure. Answer is yes, of course. So what do? Well, you can see the cross behind me, right? How many pieces are there on the cross? 1 and 2. 2 pieces. But Jesus gives us 2 commandments in the New Testament. Now, a commandment is the highest degree of obedience that the Father calls us to. A commandment. And how many are there? 2. First commandment, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and your mind. So I like to think of the cross as that vertical piece is love God. The horizontal piece is the second part. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The length of this one is bigger than this one. But when we are in the flesh or just human beings, maybe we reverse it. Do you think sometimes we rely too much on people? We make this the long one and this the short one, if it's there at all. Some of us just have a beam lying on the floor, if you know what I mean. So, how is this for you? The big aha that I received was whenever I would be in emotion, upset, and it's natural for all of us, I would call a friend, right? How many of you call a friend? And of course you call a good friend, someone that won't argue with you and they're going to agree with everything you're saying. Yeah, you're right. She really is bad. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's a friend you call. And then you hang up and you phone your other friend and yeah. Fortifying your conviction that this person is bad and you are good. Now I wonder how helpful that is. Now we do get reattached, don't we? We get reattached to our buddies. But are we reattached to God? What if next time, very first thing you do, and even if you don't know how to pray, you just say, God, help me. I'm addicted to this person's anger and how it's hurting me. I feel awful. I feel such shame. They're so wrong. How do I get out of this? How do I change them? Let's be honest. We do pray about that, don't we? How do I change that person? Everybody here has tried to change someone, right? It is sort of like pushing a wet noodle uphill. Have you heard you can't send a turkey to Eagle School? All these things apply. And we put our energy into this instead of this. So, we put our emphasis on human relations rather than our relationship with God. It does say in John 14, verse 15, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And notice how the very first commandment is to love him. And the second one is to love thy neighbor. Now, many churches will have the love thy neighbor piece really good. But then that's almost just like doing good works. And it's emotionally based. But if you want to have sustainability in your life, I believe that we've got to have this in order first, and this will be much easier. Second thing is we have to know where to focus. When I was growing up, I had an amazing grandfather. In fact, at periods in my life, I wondered if it was the second coming of Christ. Really. His name was Grandpa Love. Now, what a great last name for someone that just exuded love. Had Mother Teresa married, it would have been Grandpa Love. Yeah, that's the kind of guy we're talking about. He used to call me Honey Bunny. Oh, I would just melt. What an honorable thing to say to an angry teenager. I just felt so loved. When I was a teenager and I got my license on my birthday when I was 16, I know there's some of you folks that did the same. My grandfather trusted me with his truck. It was a yellow half-ton truck. I know he had to wait till he was retired to buy it. It was his beauty. He gave me the keys. I remember, oh my gosh, And my parents were thinking, thank God it's not our car. Go ahead. I get in the truck. Of course, what do? Pick up all my friends. Go for a ride. So I'm parking where I thought there was a lot of room. And I parked right beside a garbage bin. And I remembered cranking it in there and hearing this. Needless to say, the right fender was all smashed in. I thought, oh no. Then I thought, oh, how can I return the car without telling Papa Odd? I started to rationalize, thinking, you know what? It's on the passenger side. Maybe he won't see it. Yeah, we'll go with that. My friends thought it was a great idea. Again, talking to our friends is such a good idea. They convinced me, Val, you're on the right path. Of course, I had good friends. They all agree with me. I returned the keys to my Papa Odd. Now, when I became an adult around the age of 32, guilt started to set in. For a moment, I thought I was Catholic, really. Guilt started to set in. And there were moments in time at a wonderful dinner with the family that I considered, after dinner, coming clean with Papa Odd. But something always got in the way, like dessert, or maybe Little House on the Prairie was on. Even though I don't like that show, let's watch it anyway. Everything else got in the way. Lo and behold, my grandpa was in the hospital, and I'm sitting with him. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to clear this up, because it's been on my mind a lot. He treated me so well, and I know in my heart that I've not treated him. I've treated him with dishonor, my life, with not coming clean on this. So I said, okay, Grandpa, there's something I need to tell you. Okay, remember when you gave me the keys to your yellow truck? Remember that yellow truck? And remember the seats in there and all the room that was in there? And I just loved that truck. And I was getting into cul-de-sacs and not making my point. And I said, so there's something I just wanted to tell you about the truck. And oh, geez, I just have to have some water. And I was having a hard time spitting it out. And he looks at me and he says, I know, honey bunny. He knew where to focus. In Matthew 13, verses 24 to 30, if you want to write that down, I'd be okay with that. Matthew 13, verses 24 to 30. It's called the parable of the weeds. Now, Jesus talked in parables. Now, what does that mean? Well, a parable is for the believer. But in this particular verse, he not only shares the parable, he goes on to explain it for the ones that didn't yet believe. Here it is. It says, here is another story Jesus told. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who planted good seed in his field. But that night, as the workers slept, the enemy came and planted weeds among the wheat, then slipped away. When the crop began to grow and produce grain, the weeds also grew. The farmer's workers went to him and said, Sir, the field where you planted that good seed is full of weeds. Where did they come from? An enemy has done this, a farmer exclaimed. Should we pull out the weeds? They asked. Here's the answer. He says, no. You will uproot the wheat if you do. Let both grow together until the harvest. Then I will tell the harvesters to sort out the weeds, tie them into bundles, and burn them, and put the wheat in the barn. What Jesus is saying is, let us not focus on trying to handle all the weeds. Because Jesus is saying, I will take care of that. If we focus on the weeds and not the seed, we will not fulfill the promises that God has planted in us already. And I wonder how many people have been robbed in this room of trying to handle the weeds. All the people that have done things to us. In my cone days, and they come and go, I have made the mistake of thinking I'm the only one that has been hurt this much. I'm not sure if you've had that as well. Moments in time. In my cone days, I think that I've got the right to have such revenge because I hurt so much. And in my cone days, I can pretty much talk myself into anything. But that's a life by default, not by design. Jesus wants us to commit to the design of our life. He says in Romans 12:19, "Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord." He's pretty much saying, get on with doing things. Now, that's a great idea. How do you do it? You know that saying in the Bible, "The meek shall inherit the earth"? I decided to study what meekness is. It is not weak. No. You see, weak is somebody that's afraid. Weak is based on fear. Meek is based on peace. And meekness is a decision. However, to the people that don't know, being weak and meek may look the same to the outsider. But to you, it's not the same. So let us not be people who are weak and turn the other cheek. Let's make a decision and have our lives by design and turn the other cheek, knowing full well it's not our job to handle the weeds, it's our job to water the seeds. And that is to water our own seed. Get back on track for what God is calling you to do. Get back on track in encouraging others about their paths and what they're supposed to do. I think that when we do that on faith, God shows up. I used to think, this is just talk, right? It's for other people. I just want to challenge you to test it out for yourself. If you test this out, I believe your resiliency when you get hurt to getting back to recovery will be shorter. But why not give it a test? Matthew 11:28 says, God's promise, "Come to me that labor and are heavy laden, and I will refresh your soul." You see, the problem is not the problem. These people are not the issue. It is what we do with these problems in alignment with God's call on our life. So if you're committed to having a life by design and not by default, which takes a bit of consciousness, it takes a bit of faith, but you don't have to be really, really smart. You just sort of have to say, okay, I'm in, and take a step in. I believe if we do that little step, we are at least creating some momentum in the right direction. I'll close with this. When I was with Papa Ad on his deathbed, basically, and by the way, only a week earlier, I was able to lead him in the salvation prayer to knowing Jesus. I said to him, "Papa Ad, would there be anything that you would want right now, like a meal, or what would you like?" And he says, "Oh, let me think about that. Oh, honey bunny, that would be a medium rare steak." And I said, "Medium rare steak? Every time you came to our house for a barbecue, my dad always made you medium well." My dad made medium well for everybody. And my Papa says to me, he goes, "Oh, honey bunny, that was just the way your dad made them." You know what? Jesus made us in a way that we are able to receive his blessings. And all we have to do is to design our lives to receive them. Bless you.